Hello and welcome everyone to the main event this week. I'm Meeta Sani and I'm really pleased to be joined by our special guest today, Jeanette Forder. Hi Jeanette, how are you doing?
Hi there, Meeta. I'm doing well, thank you very much. And it's lovely to be here talking to you and everyone that's on the call.
Indeed, I'm so pleased to have you on board. You are an absolute expert in our chosen topic today. So we're going to dig into that over the next 45 minutes. So just while everyone's getting settled into the room, I'm just going to do my usual. For those of you who've been in the room before, we have a wonderful 40 to 45 minutes for you. We try to keep our sessions succinct because we know how valuable time is, but we also try to make sure that by the time you leave this session, or if you're watching it after in recording format, that you can take something from this session and apply it straight into your organization. So that's our promise to you. In order to make that as effective and successful as possible, we have a chat box. So I'm literally just going to type a quick hello to everyone to show you how easy that is. So that's my hello. If you have questions or comments, please put them into the chat box. We can deal with your queries or comments straight away, and it makes this session even more interactive and effective. We've also got a poll today. So as you're jumping in, it would be great if you could put your thoughts into this poll. So Jeanette and I were talking just in our warm-up, and we were thinking about what we'd like to hear from you today. So our question is, in terms of the impact of menopause on your organization, what is the one thing that, if there's one thing you could change or one thing that we can help you with today, what would that be to help you ensure that you're winning as an organization and supporting your people? So the first option we've given is a greater understanding of symptoms and support structure, which is leading at the moment in the polls. The second is identifying employee needs against business goals, and that's their needs in terms of how they're impacted, how their symptoms impact them, and therefore how we can keep them engaged and supported to be able to continue to deliver those business goals. The next option is senior leadership buy-in, and that's second in the ratings at the moment. And it all starts from the top, right, Jeanette? So yeah, so that's another option. And then finally, thinking about what workplace adjustments, and I've got a little typo in there, I apologize, and flexible working solutions that you would consider for your organization. So as you're jumping in, please put your opinions and thoughts into that poll so we can make sure that we focus on those as we go. So just putting in, just having a look at the chat box. So yeah, so all is in place, and I think we're ready to dive in. So Jeanette, first and foremost, thank you. This must have been the busiest week for you because we had World Menopause Day on Wednesday.
Yep.
But that's actually been encompassed in a whole month of women's health, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. I think October used to be Breast Cancer Awareness Month, but it's that's still important. But we've started, particularly this year, talking in broader terms of general women's health. So it became Women's Health Month. We know Menopause Day is super important. For me, it's been a whirlwind of meetings, presentations, and I'm absolutely over the moon that this conversation is now high on people's agenda.
Yeah.
When I'm postmenopausal, but when I went through it, it wasn't on any radar screens at all, and not on my GP. So this month has been amazing. So to be having this conversation is what I've been dreaming about.
Well, you are probably a great sort of a radar of how much engagement there is from the business world and from organizations. And so are you saying that this has been the busiest you've been at this time?
Yes, absolutely. I've been working full-time on menopause awareness for the past just over three and a half years.
Yeah.
And actually this year, from the beginning of this year, there's been much more interest, but particularly this month, definitely. And there's been a lot in the press. We've had Davina McCall, who is a great advocate, Louise Newson. They're all out there talking about it. It's in the news. There's been debates in Parliament about it. So it's been absolutely fantastic that the world is waking up to it. So couldn't ask for more.
No, and I'm really pleased that we're able to have this conversation today, because for our network and our community, our business community, we try to always make sure that we're working with organizations that care about their people, that understand that the success and the achievement of targets and goals is through the right engagement and productivity of their people. And if we can get that right, then everything else will flow from there. And yet, this is one of the, as you said, the areas that is only now becoming of importance. But it's the largest demographic shift of people going into menopause. And that was pretty scary, actually. So I'm glad that the world's waking up. So can you tell me a little bit, because you've got some amazing stats that really blew me away. I knew that it was an important topic.
Yeah.
I didn't quite realise how important. So just talk me a little bit of the impact that you've gleaned from recent studies.
So, absolutely. The stats are frightening at times, to be honest. And you're right. Menopausal people make up the largest and fastest growing demographic, not just in the UK, but globally. And in the UK, 80% of menopausal people are in work. And that's amazing. That, again, shows our life expectancy is longer, so our work expectancy is longer. And also, we're an ageing population. So, again, we're going to be in the workplace. It also shows the fact that women's independence and economic financial viability is growing, because we're not having lives like we used to. They're not the traditional, get married, have a partner, have children, work part-time. Some people still do that, but the demands are that women want to have longer, better, bigger careers. They want to achieve.
We are probably the first generation of where women are acting and striving to be exactly equal. I know that my mum's generation were working, but it was always the secondary job.
Yes.
And we know now, we can see there are a lot of women that are actually the primary breadwinners, but if not primary, then the majority are equals. And so, my frustration, having been through the whole journey myself, and one of the reasons that, I actually bought out the main group is because it allowed me to flourish in all areas of life. And actually getting the right support in an organization is what's going to help your employees have longevity. You think about the skills drain of women, not just, first you've got it when they go off on maternity. Well, they've started putting period support in place, then it's maternity, then it's the flexible working from that, and then it's menopause. No wonder, there's such a skills drain from organizations, the intellectual property, the knowledge and expertise, and therefore the diversity of an organization is impacted. But also, you're never going to get a diverse board if you're not retaining these people for succession planning. So, my frustration has to take a deep breath and know it's starting to, we're starting to make that change. And organizations that are in the room today, that have attended all your events, that are making this a priority topic to not just tick box, but to understand how to overcome, are going to be successful. They're going to be ahead of the curve. They're going to be the most profitable. They're going to become employers of choice. And I always say that, my business supports organizations in hiring the right people, retaining them through training, identifying through succession planning, and we just help them encompass all of that into ensuring that everything aligns. But if we can't be an employer of choice, that hiring is just a leaky bucket.
Exactly. You've got to plug that hole at the bottom.
Yeah.
And what a lot of employers, and it's a generalization, but a number will forget that we are all so connected now. We've all got social media. There are, other organizations like the 10 Times Top 100 to work for, best places for women to work. People take part in these. They talk to friends, they talk to colleagues, they talk to family members. And actually, that's where your reputation as a good, supportive employer actually, lives or dies. Because if you're not, I know I worked in the civil service for many years. Unusually, they were really behind the curve on menopause and are only just waking up to it. So I went through a really tough time from age 47 when it wasn't caught up, right until age 55 when finally my GP said, "Oh, I wonder if." and you think, thank goodness, and finally got HRT, and yeah, the rest is history. Sure. But I didn't have any support, or very little support, going through that from either men or women. We didn't talk about it. Getting flexible working, when I asked to go to work 4 days a week instead of 5, it was a major issue. So we're starting to recognise that. But I was one of the estimated 1 million women that left the workforce during the pandemic and hasn't come back. And that's an amazing number. When you think 25% of the women in your organisation, aged 45 to 55, will think about leaving. 1 in 10 of them absolutely will do. Can we afford to lose that skill? Absolutely. They will be at that level where they might just be getting onto the board, really senior, lots of experience, lots of expertise, lots of knowledge, and then you're just going to let them walk away? To me, it's absolutely crazy.
Well, knowing the cost of replacing great people at that level, you know, we want to plug that hole, and we want to work with employers who want to be the employers of choice and who understand that actually supporting their workforce, whatever the demographic, whatever the challenge is priority for them. And so we've got a room of people here who are engaged in that space. What I'd love to know for everyone that's in the room is if you can just put into the chat box, are you here from a business perspective or more of a personal interest, or if it's both? If you can just put your comments into the chat box, that would be great, because again, that will allow Jeanette and I to ensure that we get the right approach to the conversations we're having. So, Jeanette, you and I have got a few areas that we've said we want to cover off today. So first and foremost, which I suppose is the first poll answer, is how we can support our staff members experiencing the menopause. So a greater understanding of symptoms and support, the support structure around that. Removing the menopause taboo, what we can do for that. And I think that links to senior leadership buy-in. And, you know, so we'll talk about that some more. And then how you can ensure that you're ultimately the employer of choice, which is what we've just been talking about, and retaining key talent. So that, for me, absolutely fits into the workplace adjustments and flexible working solutions, but also identifying what employee needs are, like having those conversations. So let's just have a little look at the chat box and see. Okay. So we've got some
interesting.
Yeah, definitely. So Carol says that she's here for business. They have a policy in place looking for ways to promote and develop support. So we'll definitely cover that off, Carol. Elizabeth says personal. We've got both. We've got a lot of both. We've got some personal. So fantastic. So we've got our work cut out for us.
We have. I mean, I have to say, you can't separate the personal from the business, because we take our whole selves into the workplace. And actually, when we're able to understand what's happening to us and manage those symptoms effectively, we can be amazingly creative, innovative, and have lots of energy and think differently, because menopause doesn't just rewire our bodies, it importantly rewires our brains. So we have an opportunity to tap into some of that creativity we didn't know we had. So you can't separate the two sides. They're one part of the same person, part of the same story.
Perfect. Well, I like that, because it's holistic, and what we know will help us, we know will help others as well. So Jeanette, where do we start? How do we gain a greater understanding of what menopause, again, going through it myself, but how would an organisation, if they're starting today from scratch, they've got an idea of the fact that they want to improve, but they don't know where to start from. Where would they glean that understanding of what people are impacted by?
So there's lots of different things that you can do. Before you get into doing any workshops and training, I always turn around and say, know your data, understand your levers. I have a 20-year career from HR. And I never, during that career, used to think analytics was particularly exciting, but you can tell how much I've changed since then. But you need to,
power,
absolutely, you need to understand where your workforce is at. So you will have lots of demographic information based on age, length of service, type, grades, how long people have been in grades. You will have an awful lot of performance management data. So you will understand where there are performance dips. If you do analytics and look at performance dips and overlay it with gender and age, you may well see patterns coming out and correlations.
Yeah.
You will have sickness absence data, whether that is where you look at it and you think we've got a number of women in this age bracket taking lots of short-term absences, lots of different things like upset stomachs, migraines. Very few will say bad periods. Usually upset stomach gets that. Severe fatigue, colds, flus. Again, often when you don't know what's happening, you get lots of different symptoms.
And also stress and anxiety. Because very often, I think one of the biggest challenges for women coming into this is they don't know they're going through menopause to start with. They're starting to get to an age and a stage where they're thinking, okay, especially because now we're talking about it more, but symptoms can range. They can be so like 40 or 50 different symptoms.
And some.
Yeah.
There are, I know of 60 plus symptoms. It depends where you look. Yeah. But what we have to recognise is that our bodies as women are literally covered in estrogen receptors. Estrogen is the key hormone that starts to wax and wane and do all sorts of crazy stuff through perimenopause. But it's instrumental in over 400 bodily functions. So when that changes, your symptoms can range drastically. Yeah. But you'll have one lady who doesn't feel anything and someone else who has the whole range. Yeah. 1 in 4 will have really debilitating symptoms that can last for years. So that's where it's quite difficult as an organisation to think, well, how can we support you? Because one size fits all does not work. It doesn't work in this.
And also this very male dominated mindset of, oh, open the window, give her a fan. I mean, it's insulting, isn't it? And, I'm not saying this is every man, and it's certainly not the people that are in this room thinking about how they want to make their world better for their menopausal people and supporting them. However, we tongue in cheek put the title of today as is menopause a dirty word, because unfortunately there's still a stigma and a taboo around it, and so much is being done. Like, where would you say that is coming from?
It's legacy. It's grown up over the years. As women in the past, and we've probably all been a little bit guilty of it, we've kind of shrouded our biology in some sort of mists, and it's all a bit of a black art. It's all women's issues. We're getting much better now, but because of that, we didn't talk about it. Certainly generations before us didn't talk about it. They weren't working through it. They'd either given up work by then, or things were different, so it didn't impact as many and wasn't as visible. But we didn't talk about it, and we certainly didn't talk to men about it. Back in the 50s, when you used to have a baby, the man stayed outside smoking a cigar. Yeah, it's very different now. Yeah, but we still don't educate. So at school, we educate on sex education, and we know there's an economic driver there that came about to stop teenage pregnancies. Yeah. It wasn't necessarily about how do your bodies work. Who knew about hormones back in puberty other than, oh, they're all raging? Yeah. At that point, we should also be teaching the girls and the boys what happens at the end of that fertile time. Journey. Yeah. And also because menopause represents an end, so it's an end to your fertile time, an end to when you can become a mum, it's also seen as an ageist thing. And we know we can be quite ageist in the UK. But again, 100 years ago, menopause was happening around about age 59, and our life expectancy was only about 65, 67. So it was you're old. Right, now we can expect to live to 83, and 1 in 7 will live to 100. Yeah. So, but we still think of it as an ending. We're old. We're past it.
And therefore, it still feels like a dirty. I understand that.
We don't want to talk about it.
No. And the challenge for women is, I know for myself, I am very much in the thick of my career. I don't see it coming to an end. I want it to evolve. Yeah. And it's understanding what these symptoms look like, feel like. As you said, they're so broad. But what you started with was about being in communication, right? So it's doing the feedback, it's getting a feel and a gauge of what challenges everyone's feeling. And if we can train our managers to have the right conversations, do the right surveys, have the right workshops, pretty soon they're going to know each of their people individually and what they need.
Absolutely.
But then above that, there needs to be an overarching room for flexibility and support that then allows those symptoms to be supported and not become an obstacle.
Yeah, and we know that work is still very much built around men coming back from the Second World War, their hierarchies. And again, I'm not men bashing. It always sounds like I'm on my feminist soapbox, but the world of work is not designed to support our biology as we go through life in all sorts of different ways. So actually having that conversation before you even get into train managers, open a conversation where Carol said they've got a policy. Fantastic. But a policy that just sits on a shelf becomes a dusty, useless piece of paper. Actually, when you've got a policy, celebrate it, get out, have awareness raising events. You can bring speakers in like myself and others. You don't have to, but just make it acceptable to have a conversation. And you'll be surprised. People want to learn. I did an event on Wednesday. I found out in the end, it was an online one, over 700 people on there.
Wow.
At least 60% were male as well, because they want to learn.
Yeah.
They want to understand as well.
Yeah.
So that is the key one. Removing the taboo is first off making it safe and okay to talk about it. Yeah. Then you get into training around, so what does that look like? Yeah. How does a manager have a conversation with a staff member? Because those difficult conversations are by nature difficult.
And so I guess my question to you would be, if as a manager they can see that somebody's struggling, is it as simple as saying, I notice that you're having some sick days, I notice that your work rate has shifted, how can we support you in this? Do you want to share with me what's going on? Can it be that frank?
Yes.
Good.
It can be that straightforward. As managers, I always say line managers are the closest people to their teams. They should know their teams, obviously depending on the size. They should know them almost as well as the individuals know themselves. Yeah. You know when someone's at their best. Yeah. You can see when they're not. So actually saying to them, this isn't a performance management conversation. This is just a well-being conversation. I'm concerned about you. I'm observing this. That's not how you usually are. What's going on for you? Would you like to talk about it? Or tell me, what can I do to help? Because sometimes people don't want to talk about it. One, because they don't understand it themselves.
Well, yeah.
They're quite off-put when someone else raises it to them. But just open that conversation. Be brave. Yeah. Because, 9 times out of 10, they're going to thank you for it.
Indeed. And actually, a lot of organisations have private medical. Within that private medical support, access to GPs and specialists is really easy. There's no extra cost. You can usually get somebody within 24 hours. And as a manager, to say, listen, why don't you utilise this and have a conversation? Exactly. Sometimes people just don't know where to go. Yeah. So they don't need to be referred to HR. It's educating your team on already invested in support that can then help your people. I would also say, if we're looking at it from the flip side, any employee that has done their research, that understands the tools available, who says, listen, manager, I'm having a challenge. This is where I'm having a challenge. I've got some solutions that I'd like to bring to you that fulfill business objectives, but will also allow me to have some space. I think that is a very important conversation to have. So for those in the room that are looking at it from that personal perspective, it's turning it the other way and thinking about what conversation can I go to my manager with? Yeah. And, in this day and age of flexible working and hybrid approach, I think a lot of employees can almost not mask their challenges, but deal with them at home in a different way and then deal with them at work in a different way. I agree. I think that's created a bit of a problem because almost they're thinking, oh, well, I can deal with it for those 2 or 3 days. It's just when I go to work.
Yeah.
Those 2 days are as important for you because if you can't do an optimized day of work, engagement and productivity, you're not going to feel like you're winning. And those days start to compound and negatively in yourself.
Yeah. And you can't underestimate the massive numbers of presentism where people are showing up for work. I know when in my corporate career, I did the same thing. Oh, I don't really feel up to par. I'm not ill enough to take time off, so I'll work from home. Yeah, I'm not up to par. And actually, you're not doing yourself any good because, again, as you go through menopause, self-care is the biggest thing you need to be focusing on for your physical and mental well-being. But actually, when you're working and you're suboptimal, you're not really doing your team any good or your organisation. It's better to be able to say, I need to take time for me. I know for me, anxiety was the big thing that showed up. It kept me awake at night and I wasn't sleeping. The thought of getting up, going and mucking out a horse, getting on the train, going into the office, being in that noisy environment was so overwhelming. It had me almost having panic attacks. And when I had that opportunity to talk to my manager, who was fantastic, he did at least twice a month a well-being, how are you doing, what can we do to help conversation. And I recounted this to him and he was very, very supportive and said, you know what, when you're having those days, is it every day? I said, no, it's not every day. And I don't know why. He said, but when you're having one of those days, you've got the kit. Just phone me and say, I need to work from home. And also his view was, I don't even mind if you take a couple of hours extra in bed and don't start work until 10 or 11. It's not about the hours you put in. It's about the output. And I trust you. And that was the most empowering thing he could ever have done for me.
Tell me about that stat that you recently became aware of, something about when women are supported at work versus when they're not supported. That was really interesting.
So there is a huge amount of research out there about the numbers of companies that don't do anything, and it's all quite negative, and how, I think it's 47% of women don't feel supported and they don't tell their managers when they're experiencing symptoms. But the CIPD have recently published another piece of research and they've looked at organisations that are supporting their staff. So the good news is that 27% of large organisations have a menopause policy. I know that's only a third, but hey, it's a starting block. But they also looked at how women feel their symptoms are impacting them, whether they feel supported or unsupported at work. So those that are unsupported at work, 18% of them said that their symptoms weren't a problem. So it's a bit double negatives and things like that. So when they're not supported, 18% said that they could carry on, their symptoms didn't impact them. Women that felt supported at work, 25% of them said my symptoms aren't a problem.
So i.e., even though they're going through the same thing, because they've got an environment where they feel like they've got some room to manage the symptoms, they don't feel that the symptoms are a problem, which actually removes so much noise. I think it's hard for employers who don't have this holistic output mindset. If there are employers that are sitting there and they think, well, we have to measure everything, it's working with your senior leadership to educate them on why that won't necessarily give the best outcome. And we know that with the right level of expertise, and as we said, women at this age are, they've got so much experience. To lose them is detrimental. I'm just going to quickly answer Louise's question. Yes, absolutely, Louise. We do a recording of today, and for everybody, please share this with whoever you feel. Louise, you're going to share it with your manager. Fantastic. Please feel free, because it really is about raising awareness and helping everyone understand that it's so subtle. The challenges and the adaptations, that it's not going to, because if you actually think about flexible working is a legal right. To apply for flexible working is a legal right anyway for an organisation. So first and foremost, you as an organization already are in the space of flexible working. Within that, you can talk about condensed hours, you can talk about shorter days, you can think about whether you're willing to let somebody do a 4-day week where it might affect salary, or you could talk about job shares. All of these things are already in the realm of what organizations do. But it's thinking about aligning that with menopause challenges. And first of all, what you've spoken about, being in communication, having educational, like you said about the event you did on Wednesday, raising education and awareness, and then just building in these wellness programs. We at the main group work with some of our clients. We have what's called a wellness hub. We've curated a group of 10 wellness experts who are then available to our people and available out to our client world as well. That's just an extra layer of support. So many organizations have development budgets, or they have bonuses they give. Link that to what your specific employee needs are. You won't spend more money. It'll just be aligned with what their needs are. And as you said, going from 18% weren't affected by symptoms to 25%, just knowing you're supported makes all the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Just having this conversation makes a massive, massive difference. And you can quite easily, as an employer, give women support. You'll all have intranets. Just have a page on there that is women's health support or menopause support, and you can list some really great support. If you've got private medical cover, you've got an EAP service, counselling, everything is there. There are so many trackers out there now that you can download as free apps, or unapologetic plug. I have one on my website. It runs through the symptoms. It asks you, what are you experiencing? How bad is it? Good or bad? How long? Load it all into a system. It does all the stats. It'll tell you. You can keep that information so you know what the problems are.
And you can give those to your employees. So what I would say is that all of Jeanette's and my details are available with the recording. So if there's something that's specific to your organization, I'd say put it in the chat box. Let's talk about it now. If you don't want to have it discussed in an open forum, please reach out to us after. We're also on LinkedIn. So there's many ways. Follow us, link with us, connect, and let's keep this conversation going. Let's get these solutions, whether it's personal, professional, it's all going to impact your world positively. You spoke about EAPs. I think inclusivity as well. I think through the education becomes inclusivity, and ensuring that actually, we're no longer at the end of our life when we're going through menopause. We are very much
40 plus years to go.
Exactly. I know, God willing. But also from a work perspective, everyone has a career echo. They do what they do, similar to yourself. You took what you had done and then you aligned it with the way you want to add value into your into your business community going forward. Career echoes are huge. Everyone in the room who might be going through menopause is also thinking, well, is this serving me? And for employers, have that conversation. Have a career development conversation. This is where I am. This is how I'd like to add value back. I know as an employer and working with all the businesses we work with, no employer wants to lose somebody that they really value. But more often than not, it's a miscommunication. It's a lack of awareness and understanding. So it's an equal responsibility, I would say.
Definitely. I would absolutely agree. You get lots of data when people leave, if they've completed exit interviews and things like that. But actually, again, if you're having regular conversations that cover not just performance, but they cover well-being, they cover career aspirations, development, talent, succession planning, you should be having those conversations and be able to see where an individual's mindset is going. Because having been on that journey, I don't think I hid it at all. If I did, I didn't hide it very well. But equally, when I did resign, it was a big surprise to everyone. But if you're having those regular conversations and they're in-depth enough, and your staff member, your employee, it feels comfortable to say, this isn't working for me, whether it's actually I'm falling out of love with what I'm doing, it's not aligned to my purpose, it's not the type of hours or the venue, all that sort of stuff. And those can come up with menopause because the psychological things around my purpose in life, what am I here to do, are big questions. Because as I said, estrogen affects the way that we think, and it does rewire. So if you're a manager, having that conversation, and a staff member, bring that into that conversation.
Yeah, very much. So hopefully we've covered quite a lot around how to support your people, how to remove the taboo and stop having menopause as a dirty word. The other area that came up quite high in the poll is senior leadership buy-in. Yeah. So, Jeanette, how much work have we got to do in that space?
It depends. I always think of senior leadership buy-in as a door that you sometimes need to kick open and prop open. It's a bit like the fire door. But I think there are a number of different levers. So again, there's a clear demographic case. There's a clear business case. Talk the language of your senior leaders. First and foremost, demographic, business case, exactly. Yeah. Legal case, we want to be legally compliant, all those sorts of things. Then, you can use it just makes good sense to do this. Yeah. I prefer that conversation, but sometimes you have to switch that one up later. Yeah. But again, I always say appeal to the human inside your senior leader, whether that's a man or a woman. If it's a woman, she'll go through this if she hasn't already. If it's a man, he's most likely going to have someone in his life, whether that is his partner, his sister, cousins, friends, that will go through it. Yeah. They actually are human too. So appeal to that side of them. Talk about how do you want your daughter to live working life.
Yeah. And you said that in the event you did on Wednesday, you had more men than women. And that's amazing.
I know. So
for us, when we are doing management training, we do a whole area around communicating difficult conversations. Yes. It shouldn't be difficult. But
it's crucial.
Exactly. We want it to go from being a one where people feel they have to walk on eggshells to actually, we've got a blueprint for how we address, whether it's menopause, whether it's supporting women who are having challenging periods, maternity. It's all about aligning the employee requirements with the business objectives. That is not a dirty word. And every time I bring our employment lawyer, Tosh, into one of these conversations, he always says, well, start with the business case. It's okay to start with that because that's what you're there to do. Yeah. As a business, if you're a charity or a not-for-profit organisation, talk about
what you're there to do. Yes.
And start with that. And if you're going in to have a conversation about what support you need, start with that and align it with what your suggestions are. So when we're training managers, it really comes from, I feel like managers don't know how to approach it, what conversations to have. And what I would say is that if you're looking at your world and thinking we've got managers who think they know but don't know, we can definitely help you with that. It doesn't take a lot of time. It can really be as black and white as I've noticed a shift for you.
Exactly. Yeah. And it is actually giving them that space to be able to practice almost. So I actually have one-pagers, how to prepare for that conversation for a manager and for a staff member. Yeah. And it is a blueprint. It's like, if you're nervous, follow this. Yeah. Here are some of the questions you can ask, the way you can phrase it. Yeah. And there's like 6 steps. And it is that ask first, ask a second time, reflect back, observe. It's the type of conversation you would quite likely easily have with a friend or a family member. But somehow, because you're in the workplace, it puts another scary level in there.
Indeed, and you have a kind of a ring fence of your approach. And I think what that approach is about, obviously legally, but also humanely. And you can trust that the conversation you're having is within those parameters. You wouldn't be afraid of having any conversation.
No, exactly. There's supportive conversations. Yeah. It's not, again, the big one I say for managers and for staff is, remember, assume. Assume makes an ass of you and me. Yeah. Don't make assumptions. If someone comes to you presenting and saying, I'm really struggling with my menopause symptoms, don't just go, right, excellent, we'll do this, we'll do that, here's a fan. Yeah. Because actually for me, hot flushes weren't an issue.
No.
Anxiety was an issue.
Yeah.
So that's a different approach. For other women, it might be, I just can't concentrate with this brain fog and I need a quiet space.
Yeah.
But it is that don't go into fix it mode straight away. Say to them, so what's the symptom that's causing you the biggest issue? What would be best if we could help you with?
Yeah.
And as an employee, what, as you said before, what solutions can I offer up? Or I've done my research and I think this would really help. With flexible working, how can I make that work with my team? Have I thought about it?
And I think that there's often a fear that employers don't want to set a precedent where there's an influx that they can't manage or support. Yeah. But actually, if you look at the demographic and the makeup of your organization, you're going to get people at all stages. If it's dealt with correctly, and remember, there's always a business case. Yep. Not everyone will be able to be supported to 100%, but you will be able to move the needle along where they're getting enough support to be able to manage.
Absolutely. And I get that fear. That's why I always say to staff, think about what's the symptom that causes you the biggest issue. Yeah. That if you could resolve that and get that support, what would that look like? And start from there. But equally, we all think menopause is really bad. And for some women it is. 1 in 4 will have debilitating symptoms for a prolonged period. But that means that 3 in 4 don't. So actually, when you think about it,
don't be afraid.
The numbers aren't as frightening. You're not opening the floodgates for everybody to go, oh, I'm having hot flushes. I can't do this and I can't do that.
Yeah.
You focus it down on those that really need that support.
Yeah. Well, look, for the last few minutes, I'd love if anyone in the room wants to give us a specific situation that they're going through, or if they've got a specific question. Jeanette and I would love to cover that now. And while we're seeing who puts what in the room, I just wanted to say, Jeanette, the other thing I feel is a big area of focus is that you may have managers that are noticing and identifying the challenges of their team, and they actually are probably the ones in the room who want to make a change. But if it is menopause friendly policies that need to come from the board, I think the best way to go back to your board is with stats, facts and costs. You can deliver the impact of not giving menopause support to your team on the ground, and to show your employers the cost of replacing, the cost of hiring, the cost of recruitment fees, the impact of you as an employer of choice for the future, and actually losing these people and against the delivery of what you need. This is where we start. When we go into an employer and we look at their attrition rates and we look at what demographic that attrition rate is in, we can start to build a picture of where there has to be more focus, and not necessarily financial investment. Usually it's time it's some thinking, it's some presence and mindfulness about how you sort of direct your resources. That's all it is.
Yeah. And if you can use your stats to show potential opportunity missed costs, as well as costs, that missed opportunity, that can have a big impact as well. Yeah. And again, talk their language. But if you've also got a groundswell of managers who want to make changes or staff who want to have this conversation, you kind of meet in the middle. Yeah. Because I set up, when I was in investment banking, I set up a women's network because I was fed up of being the only blooming director on the trading floor. Yeah. And just set up a women's network that at first it was coffee and moaning, but then we went, actually, how do we change this? Yeah. And through that conversation, going to senior leaders, they then went, oh, you've got a point here. Yeah. But again, talk the same language, not the, this is really hard. It's actually, we want to see a change because we think we can offer to you.
Yeah, this is the impact, as you said, the opportunity cost of not doing this. And
definitely.
The smart business owners and leaders will recognize that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gosh, well, I tell you what, we haven't got any comments in the chat box, so I'm going to assume that we've just been able to deliver all the solutions. Oh, yeah,
my lord.
Okay, so I'm going to read this out. So this comment is that I've been menopausal for 22 years, still have approximately 5 to 7 years to go. It's been a journey. It took me 12 years to get diagnosed. Upon diagnosis, and now with the focus, I'm learning so much more and understanding what is and has been happening for me. I'm here championing education and awareness for menopause. Well, thank you, Louise, for sharing that. Yeah. And how brave and determined you are, and you should be so proud of yourself. And
I agree.
Thank you for sharing that, because so many of us, you know, even though we're here in this room, how open do we want to be? I know as a CEO of my business, I have definitely felt a massive shift in the last 3 to 5 years. And I was telling Jeanette that the pandemic happened at the same time. I lost my parents in that time. I didn't know whether I was coming or going as to what the impact was. But the fact is that if I know I'm going through this, I want to make sure that my team and my business community will benefit from the challenges that I've gone through to have better outcomes. So it's about moving that needle in the right direction.
And also just seeing Louise's comment there reminds me very much that this is very much a unique journey. Some of us, it's a normal part of life. Some of us will start to experience that journey much earlier on than others for various different reasons. And that's the challenge. But Louise, amazing that you shared and that you are championing. We need more women like you. It makes my 8 years look really, I've got nothing to complain about now, for sure.
No, not at all. Everyone's journey is individual. And as
amazing.
You say, and Karen's, you know, as Louise said, it's openness. It's about sharing. It's about collective, like you did with your women's network. Collective understanding and engagement helps us understand the analytics, the outcomes, and therefore going to our organization with actual business solutions. And if you're from the organization thinking about what to do, get engaged and start having these conversations. The worst thing you can do is do nothing. You know,
I agree.
That is, if anyone's taking anything from this, make sure you go out there and you do something different. And Jeanette,
now is the time, without a shadow of doubt.
Look, we're summing up World Menopause Week this week. We're about to tie up today. I feel like we could talk forever on this subject, but
I certainly can.
Well, it's important, and it affects such a huge demographic. And looking at the statistics, that demographic is just going to get bigger and bigger. So the impact on any organisation not dealing with this is going to get greater and greater. So what would you, as a parting comment, what would you say to anyone watching this or in the room today? What would you say is the most important number one thing that they can take from this and put into place going forward?
So personally for them, understand where they are in their journey and look after themselves. Always self-care is important. Reflect on your journey, but be proud to be in that menopausal transition and to show how powerful you can be. And actually go back to your organisation. Tell them that you were on this call. Talk to your manager. I think it was it Karen that said she was going to take this back to her manager. Talk to them. Talk to your teams if you're a leader, and just say, this is what I learned today. It takes one pebble to open everything up, or one acorn to build the big tree, all those cliches. But if you can be that advocate for change, not only will you change it for yourself for the better, but you will for others. And that's ultimately, it's a bit girl powery, but it's ultimately what we want.
100%. And if you're an employer thinking, what do I do first? If you're not ready to have an individual conversation, do a poll, do an anonymous poll and say,
start a survey.
We want to get better at this. Help us understand what your challenges are right now, and bring some solutions to how we as your employer can help support you, because actually the work is done for you. All the answers are in your people. You then have to work through it and work out a process. You might not be able to do it all, but if you can say, and we're starting to put some of these in place, and we want to continue to get feedback, it will start the conversation, and it will move the needle in the right.
Ask your workforce, what do they need? What's the one thing they need that would make a difference? And they'll tell you.
And Carol has just said that when they launched their policy, they did a lunch and learn, which triggered a whole conversation. And you now talk to staff and colleagues, and you try to be open about that. Well done.
Amazing.
Oh my God, what an empowered and powerful session this has been. Thank you, everyone who's in the room. And Jeanette, thank you so much for coming along.
I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm on my favourite subject, so I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Wonderful. Well, this has been the main event, and our topic today has been menopause, and we look forward to seeing you again at a future event. But watch out for the recording and for Jeanette and my details, where we can help you further. But for now, have a great rest of the day, and bye for now. Jeanette, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All the best. Bye all.
Bye.